Year. Welcome back to the Catholic Buzz podcast, and Happy New Year to all of you who are listening or watching wherever you are during these holy days that we're celebrating during the Christmas season. And we just celebrated at the beginning of a new year the feast day, the solemnity of Mary, Mother of God. And that's how we start the new year. It's a holy day of obligation in Canada and most parts of the world. And so we began the new year. What a better way to start the new year than honoring the Blessed Virgin Mary. My name is Father Daniele, and I'm joined by Josh Sullivan.
Yep.
Welcome to you, Josh.
Thanks.
And Matt Van Milligan.
Hello.
Matt and Josh, Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
2026.
Happy New Year to you.
And thank you. And it's our 2026. It's our sixth season of the Catholic Buzz, and we started this time by honoring the Blessed Virgin Mary. And what it just makes sense now as we start this new year, and we just celebrated this feast day to talk about sort of something that caused a bit of controversy at the end of last year, 2025, with this document that came from the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. It's called Mater Populi Fidelis. It's a doctrinal note, and Matt will tell us what a doctrinal note is on some of the Marian titles regarding Mary's cooperation in the work of salvation. So you may have heard about, the Pope changed some titles for Mary, or the Church took away some titles of Mary. And so we're going to talk about what the Church actually said in this doctrinal note, and what's appropriate to call Mary, because Mary has so many titles.
Yeah,
right?
She's one of the heroes of our faith, right? And I think this is one of the things that when we're talking as Catholics and we're baiting apologetics and theology and all that kind of stuff, we have to understand that the Church loves and honors Mary as the Mother of God, but we always know that she is just a human, and that is kind of like, and I can't remember who it is that first refers to Mary as the moon. The moon doesn't shine without the sun. The sun is the actual rays that bounce off the moon to the earth. And so Mary is the moon in this relationship, meaning she doesn't hold any power. She's not, but she is the first Christian. She's the first person that said yes. And that's who we honor as the first person who said yes, potentially even to giving her life. Because if she's pregnant, not married, all that kind of stuff, she's like the first almost potential martyr for Christ. And so we honor her with that title and lots of other titles. But one of the things the Church does not want to get wrong is that we don't want to give her and first of all, I would say that Mary would never want to get us to get this wrong, is for us to give her any more power than she should have. And the Church should be very clear in the clarifying of what her role is in salvation. And so I think what we've done here, and what the Church has kind of done, is started to say, okay, we've used these things before, we've used these titles before, but you have to understand exactly how we mean this. Otherwise, you can understand this wrong. And so we want to clear up any confusion that's going on. Because Mary, being a human being, she's not divine, she has no power, but what she does have is she's the Mother of God. And she is one of those people that we hold up there and that we want to imitate and be like because of what she's done.
So we're familiar with the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith because we've talked a little bit, numerous episodes and seasons ago, about some of the releases of the Dicastery, the Doctrine of the Faith, formerly known as a Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. It releases documents on matters of faith, matters of doctrine, right? This is a doctrinal note,
yes.
However. So, Matt, what is the difference here, and how much weight does a doctrinal note bear?
Okay, so a doctrinal note itself is usually a document that clarifies something. So usually in response to a set of questions. So in this case, and it's, just maybe to give some of the context here, the document starts out by talking about, the document itself is in response to numerous calls to clarify Mary's role in salvation. And it's in response to some people... Unfortunately, some of the commentary was like, this document is taking Mary down a peg, and like hopefully we kind of dispel that. And anyone who reads it, it's actually a beautiful reflection on Mary's unique and singular role in the incarnation, in salvation history. But it clarifies for people who who would push for more. So it's saying in requests to establish new cults or new Marian devotions. One of the driving forces is a push to establish a fifth Marian dogma. And this is Mary as co-redemptrix or Mary as mediatrix of all grace, and giving her these specific titles and establishing those as doctrine. So in response to these questions, the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith is giving a clarifying note. But to the question of how much kind of authoritative weight does this have, anything released by the dicastery for the doctrine of faith should be given the respect of the office that it's issued from. Like this is the function of that dicastery, so we should kind of read it with humility and reverence. But because it is officially promulgated by Pope Leo, so just a technical thing, if the Pope orders the publication of a document, that it forms part of the ordinary magisterium of that pontificate, and it requires if it's magisterial, it requires the religious submission of intellect and will. So this is something that we, as the faithful, have to take seriously and have to take as an authoritative teaching of the Church.
So to go back to what you were saying about if this was a clarifying note, can you explain these two names, co-redemptrix and mediatrix?
Yes. Okay. So again, I would refer people to the document just because it is
So
very
clear.
detailed and
Yeah.
again, just very, very beautiful. But the two title, it actually deals with other titles and actually proposes a third title that is maybe more appropriate than these other two. And it says these are co-redemptrix and mediatrix, and specifically mediatrix of all grace, because those actually can be understood differently.
Yeah.
The first of which is co-redemptrix. And it's interesting because this is a title that has been used in the Church historically. So this isn't something that's popping out of the ground or somebody's like trying to make a push for this to be used. And this is something that the Church has addressed in less official ways in the past. Okay, so Mary as co-redemptrix. If I'm still a Protestant and I hear Mary as co-redemptrix, red flags go up immediately. It's like, what do you mean
Sounds
by
like co-redeemer.
Yes. So, and
Like
Christ
Jesus
is the only
and Mary.
Redeemer. So,
Yeah.
so one of the main points that the document makes with reference to co-redemptrix is that co-redemptrix can be understood theologically in different ways. And this is actually a lot of the document is drawn from what Pope Benedict had to say about the issue, I think 2004-ish, because he said, like, there is a way of thinking about this that is theologically accurate. Okay, so Mary's participation in the work of redemption is unique. No one else was the efficient cause of the incarnation. No one else, like Mary's free will, her fiat, her yes, affected Christ coming into the world, which is the means of our redemption. Like, so there is a way of thinking about it where, Mary is a more principal actor in redemption than I am, or than any of the other saints. So again, the document does a really good job really, really clarifying and really specifying the way in which she is. The document says, while there is a theological way of understanding this that could be accurate, how it is interpreted or how it's received by most people is not going to be that way. So as a term, as a title for Mary, it's not appropriate. It's not what we should be using because it will cause more theological obfuscation than elucidation. It won't be as clear as people mean. Also, there's the potential not just for it to be received inaccurately, there's also the potential for it to be meant inaccurately. So people who would really, really hold on to this title as important and necessary, they may be pushing for a theology of Mary that is not quite accurate.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. It's been used since, I just saw it here, 1926 is what we've got official titles and documents talking about this since that time. But Pope JP2 used it like 6 or 7 times when he was talking about it. Again, he was talking about it in a theologically correct way, but how it's being misunderstood or how it can be taken, putting Mary above her station, putting Mary like as if she is meaning the same amount of, and that's not what is meant by that, or that the Pope meant by it, or whatever. And so bringing it back and saying, okay, we're just gonna nix this because it takes too much clarifying, and we're gonna do something else. And that's what mediatrix of grace is as well, right? Because a lot of times people just do the mediatrix, and that's Christ, right?
It's worth noting too that this isn't the first time that the church has talked about this. At Vatican II, which we talked about on our last episode, these were proposed as official titles for Mary. And at the time they weren't outright rejected, but they were said that the church is not going to adopt these officially at this time. Mediatrix is less clear cut because there are variations of the title. So, one of them is mediatrix, the other is mediatrix of all graces. And mediatrix, if we can cover that first, I think that is and the document takes the position that there is a soft sense when we mean because mediatrix is female mediator. But scripturally we understand like there's one mediator for our salvation, and that's Christ. So any other understanding of mediator has to be in a participatory sense, but in a not the source of grace, but the chosen means by which grace is dispensed. So God could effect my salvation without the help or assistance or cooperation or mediating agency of anyone.
Yes.
God could just save me. God chooses to have people meet intermediaries, if that's more helpful than mediator, for the work of grace that he does in the world. So, he uses people to evangelize. We are not the source of grace, but we can be mediators of grace.
The channel of grace.
Yes. So we can be God's chosen instruments in the work of salvation. Okay. Mary does this in a way that I'm not capable of, and the other saints are not capable of. So again, they make this really, really precise point that Mary's participation, and they cite, the wedding at Cana. That is like, Mary's participation isn't, okay, I'm going to be the dispenser of grace. She directs them back to Jesus. Do whatever he tells you. That's her role. That's her. And you use the analogy of the moon. I think so. I'm not sure where I heard this, but using Mary's Magnificat, my soul magnifies the glory of the Lord. The idea of like a magnifying glass or something like that. Like you can put light rays through a magnifying glass, and it will intensify those light rays. It's not creating light. It's not creating. It's not the sun. It's not that's creating like that. So Mary can have this role of drawing our attention to a particular grace through her intercession. She can be the conduit by which we seek particular graces, but Christ is the source of those graces.
And the document says that. I think the intention for the title mediatrix was that Mary can intercede, can assist, can cooperate, right? But this mediatrix title was now confused that she is in some way has power like the mediation of Jesus, right? True God and true man. So that's where the confusion sort of came. Christ is the only mediator, right? And so that's why the Vatican, I think, clarified this title. So both co-redemptrix and mediatrix were like a significant part of this doctrinal note that the Vatican released, right? What do you think in releasing this? Do you think it caused more clarification about Mary's role, or did it cause more confusion?
I would say that's based on the awareness of the recipient. So I can say that like I'm involved in some like Protestant Catholic discussion forums, and there were a lot of people, a lot of Protestants saying, it's really, really great for the church to clarify this, because I can get more easily on board with Mary if this is the case. You also had people kind of negatively saying, that this isn't right, this isn't accurate, this is, that. So for, at the very least, kind of clarifying the teaching for the sake of those who don't know in the first place, I think it's good. But for people who are going to haters gonna hate. No, if people are going to try and look for what's wrong with it, but I think this would have helped me. I'll say that.
But before this document came out, there was, I don't know, were you confused? Like, I never saw Mary as like in the strict sense co-redeemer.
Yeah.
Like, I never believed that or understood that. That was never the intention of the church to teach that, right? Or a co-mediator with Christ. So I'm happy that some, maybe on the outside looking in, have now found some clarification. But that was, I don't think, at least what the document says, was never the intention of the use of these words, correct?
No.
Yes.
But I think what happened is, and again, we talked about this before, but like with everything, with every there can be bad actors or not intentionally bad, I don't even think, but just putting Mary, like they have a devotion to Mary that goes so deep. But like in my personal experience anyways, every time you ask Mary to intercede or be a part of it, she always turns back to Jesus. And you kind of talked about that, the wedding of Cana, and like it's always flipping you back to Jesus. So if you're using the intercession, if Mary's involved in this, then it's always going to be, the focus is always Jesus and not Mary. And that's actually where, if you were actually reading some of the when the visionaries that see Mary sometimes and those types of things, if you want to get a clear picture, sometimes just go through some of the what Mary is potentially saying from certain visionaries, and you, when you're reading the thing, if it's all, I will save you from this, or if it's not pointing back to her son, I red flag right there. You know what I mean? Always, every single time I've read something like that. And so the church actually clarifies it really well. And I don't think it's ever been the church's intention. So like if anybody's looking in going, okay, the church finally changed their opinion, that was never the case. But I think people inside, it gave the opportunity for some people inside the church to take it and run with it and make it. And so they're like, no, we're closing that in again. We're going to close that gap. One of the things it says is, any gaze directed at Mary, that distracts us from Christ or that places her on the same level as the Son of God would fall outside the dynamic proper to an authentically Marian faith, as Mary always points to her Son. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like this, in my mind, that's the focus of this document, is to say, we're going to take some of the, because people like these saints of St. John Paul II use these terms to suggest this is who Mary is. Mm-hmm. Well, I understand this word is this way. This is, and a saint, potentially a doctor of the church in the future. Like this is one of those things that I'm going to say, hey, this is how we're changing the church. The church is going, whoa. Right now we're going to clarify. This is how it's meant. This is where it's going. This is how we're going to allow these terms to be used.
Yeah. And some people have never encountered like direct experiences of Mary in excess. For me, though, that going through our CIA, like it was a hang up that I had to like revise my just theological position that like Catholics don't worship Mary, to but some kind of do, or some bump up against that line a little bit and maybe cross over it. But what I wanted to say is I experienced this. There's maybe more to say here, but I'll try to be kind of succinct. We went to Lourdes on our pilgrimage a little while, and I've said in previous episodes that a big part of my journey with Mary was to recognize that the church doesn't give us a theology of Mary. The church gives us a mother. It gives us a relationship. And that was what really the hang up I had to overcome before I was received into the church. That I couldn't figure out Mary, as precisely as I wanted to. So having a document like this while I was going through RCA actually would have been very helpful to kind of navigate that. more precisely. But while we were in Lourdes, so Lourdes is just a beautiful, beautiful pilgrimage site. But the focus is, the Marian apparitions, and they built the basilicas on the site of the fount. But the message to Saint Bernadette was exactly what you would expect from true Marian devotion: stay close to my son.
Yeah.
And even the miraculous healings that took place there. I think Christ is the one who heals. Mary is a chosen instrument. Mary is a chosen mediator, if you will. But it's it took nothing away from the Marian devotion of the place. It was very, very. You were very aware, that Mary as the mother of the church is, why Lourdes is Lourdes, why it's this kind of beautiful pilgrimage site. So while it doesn't take anything away from Mary and her unique and singular role in the church itself as the mother of the church, it also fully points to Christ, and Christ is the one who healed. Like it was just a beautiful expression of very, very precise Marian theology, but not in a way that's just this abstract theoretical thing. It was tangible. It was present, and it was just a beautiful place to be.
It's cool. And I think the same thing. When you're going through the ones that the church has deemed as true, Lourdes, Fatima, that's what you get. You know what I mean? You get those ones. You get that feeling when you're reading through all of what Mary said to these visionaries. You're going, okay, this is true. Like it's very motherly. It's very loving. Like she wants peace on earth, and the way through that is through asking her son. Let his mercy and his grace come down. And do you know what I mean? It's always that way. I love it.
Yeah.
So the document clarifies these roles about co-redemptrix and mediatrix. Does it say that we're no longer allowed to use those titles anymore?
It says co-redemptrix is inappropriate, and it adds, I would say, a caution for mediatrix. It kind of, you would say, like nixes mediatrix of all graces entirely, but mediatrix is kind of permissible, but again, you want to be kind of clear what you mean by it.
It also talks about how Mary is the mother of believers,
Yes.
right? And it talks about her maternal grace. It talks about her maternal closeness to people, right? So, how do first of all Catholics, how would they better understand Mary's maternal closeness, especially as we're starting off a new year here, and for people who, let's say, aren't Catholic, from your experience, how would you recognize Mary's closeness, Mary's maternal closeness, if that's something that's not been part of, your faith practice or your spirituality, I should say?
Yeah, I would say, like, and just from my own experience, crossing that bridge of abstract theoretical to a relationship. So, like at the end of the Gospels, when Christ gives Mary to the church as mother, that's not giving a theology. That's giving a relationship. Yeah.
I think one of the things that I heard was one time, you can't love Mary more than Jesus loved his mother. Like there's no way to love Mary, his mother, more than Jesus loved his mother. So you can never have to worry about loving Mary more than that, if that makes sense. And so asking Mary to intercede for us. Now that's a whole other, like if we're talking about apologetics and the Catholic faith, that's a whole other ball of wax if we're talking to our Protestant brothers and sisters that want to get on board with, because we're talking now about asking those in heaven to pray for us. But that's another. But if it's just about who Mary is and who the church sees as Mary,
Yeah. Sorry. Just as a post-Protestant, pointing them to the scriptures, to the Gospels. So just like when the angel says, "Hail, full of grace." So like Mary as an intercessor. So I just think, like I said earlier on, it's like, is a mediator in the same way that we can be mediators, in God's plan for salvation. But she can do it much more perfectly than we can, because of, and you can point Protestants to the scriptures, are fullness of grace. So like, it it takes a lot of grace for me to overflow.
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't experience the fullness of grace that Mary did. So as an intercessor, I'm going to be much more imperfect as an intercessor. And feel free to ask me for prayers. Like I will pray, but like it will not be as perfect as Mary's prayer, because Mary has received every grace in fullness, so that any further grace is just overflow. Is just so as an intercessor, again, you can point Protestants, just point them right back to the Bible.
Yeah.
That's, as an intercessor.
So basically, this doctrinal note then is for us to clarify those terms that may have been used in error, correct? Or maybe
Yes,
maybe
maybe not even
some
intended
confusion.
in error,
Exactly.
but just a more pragmatic case that if we are to use these, they can end up being more confusing than
Right. It was to
helpful.
clarify sort of misunderstood
Yeah.
ways of using those titles. Yeah, like Josh said, it wasn't like the church said, "Well, she's no longer
Yes.
the co-redeemer," or "She's no longer." You know what I mean? It was just to clarify the proper use of these sort of words. But also, I like how at the end of this document too, it does reassure us of Mary's closeness to us and what her role is, like you just said, as a powerful intercessor for us, and the mother, like our mother, as people who are part of the church. It also talks about how she herself, who was the first to encounter Jesus, like carried
Yeah.
him in the womb, was his first disciple, like. It's a beautiful.
Other than John and Elizabeth and Joseph, I guess. But like, think about like who recognized right away, understood, and like for 9 months kind of had like this personal one-on-one with Jesus. You know what I mean? Like 10 months, but
Saint Augustine refers to Mary as the first disciple.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it's she was the first one to receive and accept the Christian message. But something I wanted to say earlier, but I forgot. I do really like it's. I want to say the alternate title that the document proposes, but it's not a new title. So that's the title of the document, Mater Populi Fidelius, so Mother of the Faithful People. That's again, I don't know if I don't remember exactly if the document is not trying to coin, that Marian title, but saying that this is a more appropriate title, but also fits perfectly with the theology, the precise theology of Mary, but again is also has that relational aspect as well. But this isn't. It's maybe a variation on an older title. So when we were in Rome and we were at Santa Maria Maggiore, they're saying one of the earliest titles for Mary, and it could actually be the earliest title for was Mater Populis Romani. So mother of the Roman people, but not necessarily Roman Empire, but like of all Catholics. So again, reaching back to that scripture, Jesus gives Mary to us as a mother, as the mother of the church. And yeah, I really like how this document is a throwback to, this is in continuity with how the church has viewed Mary from the beginning.
So beginning this new year, let's say someone's struggling with their like a devotion to Mary, or maybe they don't have one. What would you say would be something to start for this new year that would be helpful to grow? Maybe a devotion or a friendship with Mary. Like, what would be helpful for someone, and why would it be helpful?
I would say pray the rosary, but I would say if you want to develop a particular devotion to Mary, the rosary itself is a reflection. And again, you can take this precise theology of Mary and apply it to the rosary. So the rosary is a reflection on the life of Christ, but it's an opportunity to view the life of Christ through Mary's eyes. So at each of the mysteries, at each of the points, try and contemplate, what Mary was thinking in that situation. Where like how what does the mother think of a, if it's the joyful mysteries of a son who's behaving this way, if it's, the sorrowful mysteries, the depth of her sorrow and grief. Yeah, and just really try and understand, participate in, reflect upon, Mary's perspective on the life of Christ.
I never thought about that until you just said that, but just realizing, yeah, she is the only disciple that was there at the beginning, at the end, and then after. Do you know what I mean? Like all the way through. Even I think back, like the other one is John, just because of the readings that were, in Advent and everything else, of John the Baptist being the greatest of all men and stuff, because he recognized Jesus first and everything else, but he was beheaded before Jesus reached the sorrowful mysteries, if you will.
Yeah, and a principal source, presumably a principal source on a lot of the Gospels. So I was talking with my boys the other day about who wrote the Gospels, how do they know? I was like, well, there are only two first-hand accounts in the four Gospels, and Matthew didn't show up until Matthew chapter 9.
Yeah.
So you have the nativity in the Gospels that needed to be researched after the fact. So you have, again, presumably some authorship of Mary in the Gospel. So just some understanding of what her perspective was, what her role was, because again,
the only two people knew that they ran away to Egypt.
Yes, and by the time that the Gospels were written, it's very likely that Saint Joseph, who's the only other one who could have given a first-hand account, was not
passed
there.
away. Yeah. It's interesting. It's very cool. It's one of those, when you start the other one, Saint Louis de Montfort's consecration to Mary, right? And that's another one that to take a look at. And it's not that you have to necessarily go through and make the consecration, but there's a lot of really good resources in there, or really good thought-provoking relationship advice on how you would relate to Mary, or how the Catholic Church teaches us to relate to Mary. And so that's another place that I would suggest you, if you wanted something to do deeper in your own spiritual life, that would be, the Rosary's 100% the place to start. But if you're looking for some reading or for some other things, and there's a lot of other, like JP2 had a great devotion to Our Lady. And so looking at some of the things that he talked about and what he said, one of the pictures that my parents had in the prayer room was JP2 falling in, like just kind of slumped over almost into the arms, and Mary just holding him. You know what I mean? And that's just an image that comes to mind when I think of JP2, is just his love for Our Lady. And then maybe it was him that said, you can't love Mary any more than Jesus.
All right. Well, good start to this year, and maybe it's a good time to reflect, to consecrate our year here to Mary in your own life. So if people want to share their own experiences of their intercession, their help that they receive from the Blessed Mother, or their own devotion, you could drop a comment on our social media, or write us directly at askus@thecatholicbuzz.com. That's all the time we have in this first episode of the new year. So for Josh Sullivan and Matt Van Milligan, my name is Father Neil. We'll see you next time on The Catholic Buzz.